Do you struggle with setting realistic savings goals? Maybe your goals are too high. You're super ambitious. You want to save all this money, and then you realize, yeah, that is not doable on my income. Or maybe you set these goals and you're like, okay, I have these big goals, but I have no plan in place. This is the video for you. I recently had a subscriber reach out to me and say, hey, I'm struggling with some realistic savings goals. She sent me a message, and so I'm going to read it for you guys. Then we're going to talk about 5 ways to set realistic savings goals. So stay tuned. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. I make videos on motivating you to get your money in order. I struggled with living paycheck to paycheck for many years, had my car repossessed, struggled with money for years, and now we don't struggle with money anymore. And I give you motivation and tips on handling your money. So what she said was, do you have a video on setting realistic savings goals? Sometimes I find myself wanting to reach my savings goals ASAP, so I save a bunch and then I underestimate how much to fund other budget categories and find myself dipping into savings or just using credit to cover expenses. So it doesn't even make sense, since instead I end up getting ahead with savings and end up breaking even. I get it. I feel you. And before we dug into this, I just want to put out a disclaimer. I am in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy now, and I'm constantly out of breath. So if I'm huffing and puffing a little bit extra in this video, please bear with me. Please, I'm trying, but I get super excited, super passionate. I talk really fast, and then I huff and puff because I have a super, super high baby, because I have a girl, which I don't know if a girl makes a difference or not, but super high and pressing on my diaphragm. So it's very hard to breathe. But I have struggled with this a lot, and I really struggled with this a lot when I first started budgeting. And I had all these big goals and all these big dreams, and I did it especially with sinking funds. I was like, all right, sinking funds, I'm going to make an envelope for this sinking fund, an envelope for this one, and I have all these sinking funds. I can save a little bit of money for all these different things. And then it was just overload. Then I realized I was putting so much of my budget of the money that I had to work with into this, and then my other goals got pushed to the wayside. So it's really important to keep this in line and realize, okay, let's set some realistic savings goals. So with that being said, really sit down and figure out, okay, what are your goals that you're saving for? Be realistic with them, but also be realistic with your other expenses, because it's so easy to fall into just concentrating on your goals and not your expenses, and then your expenses get pushed to the wayside. You're like, oh, I can cut back. I can cut back in groceries, or I can spend $50 for the month in groceries. That's totally fine. I can do that. Yep. We can just eat at home every day. Totally fine, because I want to buy a new car next month. Yeah, we get these big goals. So really sit down and set realistic is the key here, realistic savings goals, so that you don't fail in your other expenses. And your fixed expenses and your variable expenses, you need to make sure they have money for those as well. Number 2 is to consider having one big fund to pull from versus multiple different sinking funds, your emergency fund, your savings, all these different funds. There's different approaches that you can take. I personally have everything in one account. I keep it all in CIT Bank, but then I have in a spreadsheet, I have it separated. So I personally don't follow this, but I know many people that do, many coaching clients of mine that do, and it works really well for them. And they just have a lump sum of money that they're putting towards each month, or once it reaches a certain amount of money, then they're like, all right, the fund is full. We can now not contribute anymore until we need it, and we can just put our excess money into other things, whether that be debt payoff or investments or whatever it may be. So think about considering having one fund versus multiple different accounts, because it can really get easy to have tons of accounts. I knew, like I said, I struggled with this. I remember at one point in budgeting, I had like 15 different sinking funds. I didn't need 15 different sinking funds. I had sinking funds for things that I can just cash flow. That's another tip too, is there things that you're putting into a sinking fund that you can just cash flow when that time comes. For instance, haircuts. We are putting money every single month into haircuts. Haircuts for my husband cost $30 in a tip. Not expensive. We can just cash flow that. We don't need to be putting money aside every single month for haircuts. We can just cash flow it. So think of different things that you're able to just cash flow if it comes up, and you don't need to save. Now, if it's a bigger purchase or a bigger amount, yeah, create a sinking fund. Like car insurance. If you're paying your car insurance every 6 months to get a discount, that's a big chunk of money that you may not be able to cash flow. So maybe have a sinking fund for that. But really cut down on the amount that you're saving and then have one big lump category of savings. Another thing to remember with this is it's very unlikely for you to need multiple sinking funds at the same time. So it's very unlikely that you're going to have car repairs and house repairs and all these other things that happen all at the same time. No, chances are you're going to need one now and maybe one in a couple months and one in a couple months. So therefore, you spend the money, you replenish it. You need to take $1,000 or $2,000 out of your sinking fund, emergency fund, whatever you want to call it, savings, just general savings, make it easy. You take $2,000 out, you replenish the $2,000, however long it takes you to do, and then you move on. Or every single month you want to add $100 or $500 or whatever it is, but chances are you're not going to need all that money all at the same time. So this may be a really good option for you if you're struggling with having too many accounts, too many sinking funds. Number 3, you know I cannot go a video without saying it. It is so important is to be on a written budget. Being on a written budget is so important. Yes, you may have big savings goals and you're focusing on your saving goals, but chances are you're not going to hit your goals as fast if you're not on a written budget. One thing I love about being on a written budget is it helps you to finalize your goals at the end of the month. I'll be honest, there was a couple months, my first trimester, where I was really sick, just exhausted, just lazy, let's be honest. I mean, I was growing a child, but I was lazy. And I stopped budgeting for like 2 months. And I noticed that we weren't overspending because we've been budgeting for so many years that we've got those practices in place, that we know how to manage our money. We know our spending triggers. So we weren't overspending. But at the end of the month, we weren't putting that extra money towards our investment goals. So we weren't hitting our goals as fast. Right now, our big goal that we're trying to hit is investments and really building up our retirement. So the money was just kind of sitting in our checking account. It wasn't really doing much. Whereas if we had finalized our budget at the end of the month, like we typically do when you're on a written budget, then we were able to transfer that money. So be on a written budget. At the end of the month, finalize it. Whatever leftover money you have, make sure it goes to something, whether it be savings, paying off debt, investing, whatever goals you have. Make sure it has a plan and a purpose and that it goes to that and not just sitting in your account, not just sitting in your budget. That's not going to put your money to good work. Next is to put a plan in place for your savings goals. So what I mean by this is rather than saying, I need money for vacation, we're saving for vacation. Okay, how much do you need? Where are you going? What are you doing on the vacation? Have a plan in place. Say, okay, we are going to Alaska. We're going on an Alaskan cruise, which we did a couple years ago. It was amazing. But we're going to Alaska. This is how much airfare is going to be to Seattle. This is how much the cruise is going to cost. This is how much I'm going to need to buy winter clothes because I live in Florida and I don't have winter clothes. This is how much we want to spend in souvenirs. This is how much we want to spend in excursions. This is how much we want to spend and whatever. Have a budget for what it is. Then you can figure out how much you need. So say you need $5,000 to go to Alaska and you have 10 months to save this $5,000. Then you know, okay, this is how much I need to save every single month. I have $500 that I'm putting away every single month. Have that budget versus I'm just throwing some money and whatever extra money I have. It may be $50 or it may be $1,000 you're putting every single month. Maybe you could be putting that other $500 towards investments or towards another goal. Or maybe at that rate, it's going to take you 20 years to get to Alaska. So have that set plan of how much you're going to need for each fund and really have that concrete plan versus just, we'll just throw some money in there. Number 5 is to assess your finances. Are there things that you can trim back? Are you wanting to hit these big savings goals, but you're spending a lot of money on eating out, or you're doing different things where you can cut back a little bit. Maybe that means stop getting your nails done. Maybe that means cutting back on lattes or whatever it is. Now, trust me, I'm not the type of YouTuber that says, cut out coffee, make all your coffee at home, never go to Starbucks and you'll be rich, all that stuff. No, I'm not about that. Jamie goes to Starbucks every single day. That's totally fine. We can afford it. We have the budget. But there were times when he wasn't doing that. So I'm all about taking that sacrifice and sacrificing for a little bit so that you won't have to sacrifice in the long haul. So sacrificing for a little bit of time so that you can live years without having to sacrifice. That's what we did. We sacrificed, we sacrificed, we sacrificed. Now we don't have to sacrifice. Now we can make purchases without having to save for months and months and months. We can just cash flow them. But we put in the hard work in the beginning so that we can get to that point. So assess your finances. This may be a season that you're in where you're like, all right, we're grinding it out. We want to save because we want to go on this trip, or we want to save because we want to buy this car, or we want to save because we want to get to this net worth, or we want to save because of whatever it may be, or pay off our debt, whatever it is. Sacrifice a little bit so that you can live extravagantly for years and years and years and years to come. And that is something that I'm really passionate about, and I wish that people understood and people talked about more is you don't have to cut coffee. You don't have to cut Starbucks. You don't have to cut eating out or whatever things that mean a lot to you. Cut back in other areas. Cut back in things that don't mean a lot to you, or just cut back for a little season and then you can go do it more. So let's keep the conversation going. If you want to know some savings challenges to keep you motivated so that you can save some money and have some visual reminders of how to save some money, check out this video here with a free printable included. And if you want to know our multiple streams of income, how we have 7 streams of income to bring in so we're diversified in our income streams, check out this video here.